The lukewarm water swirled around my chapped hands, the scent of industrial-strength disinfectant clinging to the air. "Violet, are you done in there? My pillows aren't going to fluff themselves, you know." Mallory's voice, thin and reedy from the next room, still managed to carry that familiar edge of impatience. "Coming, Mal," I called back, my voice flatter than I intended. My name is Violet, and for the last 5 years, my world had shrunk to the 4 walls of my parents' house, specifically to the confines of Mallory's sick room. I dried the bedpan, the metal cool against my skin, and placed it back in its designated spot. Every item in her room, from the medication schedule taped to the wall to the emergency call button by her bed, was a testament to a life on hold. Hers, supposedly. Mine, definitely. And did you call Dr. Albright about my new rash? It's probably a side effect of the trial drug. Or maybe it's the sheets. Did you use the hypoallergenic detergent? Mallory's litany of complaints began before I even crossed the threshold. She lay propped against a mountain of pillows, her phone already in hand, scrolling. For someone supposedly battling a rare, aggressive form of leukemia, she had an awful lot of energy for social media. I called Dr. Albright's office, left a message, and yes, Mal, hypoallergenic everything, as always, I said, moving to her bedside. I plumped her pillows, the expensive goose-down ones Dad insisted kept her spirits up. My own pillow felt like a sack of old socks in comparison. "Well, hurry them up. This itching is unbearable." She didn't look up from her phone. I glanced at the stack of bills on the small desk in the corner. My desk, crammed next to her medical supplies. Another one from the specialty pharmacy, its red past due stamp like a fresh wound. My savings account, once a healthy cushion I'd built working double shifts as a paralegal, was now a barren wasteland. My career? A distant memory. "You have to follow your heart, Violet," Mum had said, her eyes brimming with tears. "And your heart is with your sister." Dad had nodded, his hand on my shoulder, heavy with unspoken expectation. "She needs you. We need you." That was 5 years ago. 5 years of sponge baths, medication reminders, emergency room dashes that always turned out to be just a scare, an endless, crushing debt. My dreams of a small apartment, maybe even going back to school for law, had evaporated like mist. "Violet, are you even listening?" Mallory's voice sharpened. "I asked if you'd ordered that new ginger tea, the one Dr. Emily on TikTok recommended for nausea. The one that costs $50 a box?" I tried to keep the exasperation out of my voice. "Mal, my credit card." "Oh, don't start with the money, Vi," she sighed, finally looking at me, her lower lip trembling. "It's just, I feel so awful, and it's the only thing that sounds like it might help." Right on cue, Mum appeared in the doorway, her expression a carefully curated blend of concern and gentle reproach. "Violet, darling, what's this about money? Surely a little tea isn't too much to ask when your sister is fighting for her life." "It's not just the tea, Mom," I began, but she cut me off. "We all make sacrifices, dear. Your father and I have put our lives on hold too, you know. That trip to Italy we'd planned for our anniversary? Cancelled, of course. We wouldn't dream of it while Mallory is so unwell." She gestured vaguely around the room, at the new smart TV Dad had installed last month, the air purifier humming quietly, the plush rug that had appeared after one of Mallory's bad weeks. Their sacrifices always seemed to involve upgrades to their comfort, justified as necessities for Mallory's well-being. "I know, Mum, it's just tight this month." My last paycheck had vaporized, covering the co-pays for specialists, whose names I barely recognized anymore. "Well, we'll manage," Don said, joining Simone in the doorway, his arm around her shoulder. He smiled at me, that warm, reassuring smile that always made me feel like a heel for even thinking about my own needs. "Your sister's health is the only thing that matters. You've been such a rock, Violet. A true angel. An angel whose wings were clipped and whose halo was a mounting pile of debt. I forced a smile. Of course, I'll order the tea. Later that evening, as I was preparing Mallory's bland dinner, steamed chicken and plain rice, though I'd smelled steak frying downstairs earlier, Mum came into the kitchen. She was beaming. Guess what, dear? She said, her eyes sparkling. Mallory was saying she's feeling surprisingly well today. A real burst of energy. Oh! I stirred the rice, a tiny, hopeful flutter in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, things were turning a corner. Yes, and it got me thinking, Simone continued, her voice bright. We should start planning a little something. A small celebration, for her resilience. To show her how much we all admire her fight. She paused, then added, It would mean so much to her, especially coming from you, Violet. You could organise it. Something lovely. The hopeful flutter died, replaced by a familiar cold dread. Another event, another expense, another demand on my dwindling resources and non-existent time. I looked at my mother, her face alight with an enthusiasm that felt utterly disconnected from the reality of our supposed situation, and a tiny, almost imperceptible crack formed in the foundation of my devotion. A party? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Not just a party, darling, Mum corrected, her smile widening. A miracle recovery party. Mallory has been so brave, and the latest blood tests. Well, Dr. Albright is cautiously optimistic. He said he's seeing improvements he never thought possible. My spoon clattered against the saucepan. Improvements. Real improvements. A wave of genuine dizzying hope washed over me. Could this be it? The end of the nightmare? It's true, Vi, Mallory chirped from the living room, where she'd apparently been listening. Her voice sounded stronger than it had in months. I'm feeling better, like way better. Dad walked in beaming. It's a miracle, Violet. A true, honest-to-God miracle. And we need to celebrate it properly. A big celebration, Mum chimed in. All our friends, family, we need to share this wonderful news. And you, Violet, you're the perfect person to organise it. You have such a knack for these things. And you know Mallory's taste best, Dad added, giving my shoulder a squeeze. Spare no expense. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. The initial euphoria began to curdle. Spare no expense? I repeated, my voice small. Dad, Mum, we need to talk about the finances. I'm really stretched thin. The last round of experimental treatments. Oh, Violet, please, Mum sighed, her smile faltering. Don't be such a Cassandra. This is a time for joy, for gratitude, not for worrying about silly little bills. They're not silly little bills, Mum, I insisted, my voice gaining a desperate edge. My savings are gone. My credit cards are maxed out. I don't know how I can possibly fund a large party. Lack of faith, Violet. That's what that sounds like, Dad said, his jovial expression hardening slightly. After everything Mallory has been through, after this incredible news, you're worried about money? Don't you want your sister to have one moment of pure, unadulterated joy? Of course I do, I cried, stung. But how? You'll figure it out, sweetie, Mum said, patting my arm. You always do. For Mallory. She exchanged a look with Dad, a silent communication that shut me out, branded me as difficult, ungrateful. The next few weeks were a blur of forced enthusiasm and mounting panic. Mum and Mallory compiled endless guest lists, debated catering menus, and picked out elaborate decorations, all with the blithe assumption that I would magically produce the funds. Every tentative suggestion I made for a more modest affair was met with disappointed sighs or outright accusations of not caring enough. One afternoon, while I was on the phone desperately trying to negotiate a payment plan for an overdue utility bill, I heard Dad in his study, his voice uncharacteristically jovial. He was on the phone, his words muffled by the closed door, but snippets drifted out. Another successful withdrawal. Angel investor really came through this time. Smooth sailing. Angel investor. My blood ran cold. We didn't have any investors. The only angel in this equation was me, and my funds were anything but smoothly sailing. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. What was he talking about? I started noticing other things. Mallory's good days, once sporadic, now seemed to conveniently align with the days my meagre disability support payment for being her full-time carer hit my account. A new silk robe for Mallory, because the old one was scratching her delicate skin. A state-of-the-art coffee machine in the kitchen, because Dad deserved a decent cup of coffee with all this stress. Little luxuries, constantly appearing, while I was watering down my shampoo to make it last. The party planning steamrolled ahead. Mum insisted I use my last remaining credit card, the one with the highest interest rate, for the deposit on the venue. "It's an investment in Mallory's happiness, Violet," she'd said, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Think of the memories." A week before the party, Mum sent me up to Mallory's room. "Darling, be a dear and fetch that box of old photo albums from Mallory's closet. We need some pictures for the slideshow. She's resting now, so try not to disturb her." Mallory was indeed asleep, or pretending to be, a slight smile on her face. Her room, as always, was pristine, yet cluttered with the detritus of a pampered invalid. As I rummaged in the back of her oversized closet, pushing aside designer shopping bags, I vaguely remembered appearing after a particularly generous gift from Aunt Carol. My hand brushed against something stiff in the pocket of a rarely worn jacket. Curiosity, a feeling I hadn't indulged in years, got the better of me. I pulled it out. It was a receipt, a crisp, glossy receipt from Chic Boutique, a store so exclusive I'd only ever seen it in magazines. The date on the receipt was from 3 weeks ago, a week Mallory had supposedly been so weak from a relapse that she hadn't left her bed, a week I'd spent spoon-feeding her broth and monitoring her temperature every hour. The itemized purchase? A Serafina limited edition handbag. The price made my vision swim. It was more than my entire monthly income. The day of the miracle recovery party dawned bright and unseasonably warm. Our house, or rather my parents' house, buzzed with an almost manic energy. Caterers bustled, florists arranged towering displays of lilies and roses, Mallory's favourites naturally, and a string quartet tuned their instruments on the patio. The sheer scale of it, the opulence, made my stomach churn. Every linen napkin, every crystal glass, felt like another nail in my financial coffin, hammered in with the credit card I'd reluctantly surrendered for the essentials. "Violet, darling, could you check on the champagne flutes? Make sure they're polished to a sparkle," Mum trilled, sweeping past in a new silk dress, her face flushed with excitement. "And Vi, did you pick up my dry cleaning? The sequined top. I need it for my speech," Mallory called from upstairs, where she was presumably undergoing a lengthy beautification process. I was a whirlwind of last-minute tasks, my smile stretched so tight it felt like it might crack. Run Ragged didn't even begin to cover it. I'd barely slept, my mind a hamster wheel of overdue bills and the sickening image of that handbag receipt. Finally, amidst the rising crescendo of arriving guests, aunts, uncles, cousins, my parents' golf buddies, people I hadn't seen in years who now clapped me on the back and called me a saint, I managed to escape. "Just need to freshen up," I mumbled, heading for the small, rarely used guest bathroom upstairs, away from the throng. I leaned against the cool tiles, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The noise from downstairs, the laughter, the clinking glasses, felt a million miles away. My reflection in the mirror was a stranger, pale, hollow-eyed, with a forced brightness that didn't reach my eyes. My gaze fell on the countertop. A sleek, unfamiliar smartphone lay beside the sink. Not Mallory's usual phone, the one she was always glued to. This one was different, a generic, cheaper model. Her burner phone, she'd once casually mentioned, just for emergencies, in case my main one dies and I need to reach Dr. Albright. It had seemed plausible at the time. Now, a cold suspicion prickled at the back of my neck. It was unlocked. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was an invasion of privacy, a betrayal of trust. But the image of that receipt, the hushed phone call Dad made, the endless stream of little luxuries, something was terribly wrong. My hand, seemingly of its own accord, reached out and picked up the phone. I tapped the messages icon. My breath hitched, a group chat. The participants, Mallory, Caesar, Mum, Dad, Cesar. The name snagged in my memory. Mallory had mentioned him a few times. A wonderfully supportive friend she'd met online in a support group for the rare disease sufferers. He'd sent flowers once. Expensive ones. My thumb trembled as I scrolled up, my eyes devouring the words. Mallory. OMG, this party is going to be epic. Can't wait to see everyone's faces. You think they'll buy my miracle speech? Caesar. Babe, you're a natural. They'll be eating out of your hand. Just remember to look suitably frail when you thank our little ATM. P.S. Did you book the upgraded suite for Maui? My blood turned to ice. Little ATM? Maui? Mum, don't worry, sweetie. Your delivery will be perfect. Violet really outdid herself as our little ATM. Good thing she's too gullible to question anything. She even used her last credit card for the caterer. Bless her devoted little heart. Dad. Atta girl, Simone. Knew we raised a smart one in Mal. This illness has been the gift that keeps on giving. Just keep those symptoms convincing until after the party, Mal. We need one last big sympathy push for the recovery fund. The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering against the porcelain sink. I stared at my reflection, but the person looking back was a ghost, her face a mask of dawning horror. The messages continued, a sickening scroll of their gleeful confessions, their meticulous planning, their cruel, mocking dismissal of me. Jokes about my exhaustion, my gullibility, my dwindling finances, screenshots of faked lab reports they'd shown me, doctored hospital invoices they'd used to solicit donations from well-meaning relatives, all funneled into their pockets. Pictures of Mallory and this Caesar, tanned and laughing on a beach somewhere tropical, dated from a time she was supposedly confined to a sterile hospital wing undergoing a critical procedure. Years. 5 years of my life. My savings, my career, my youth, all built on a monstrous calculated lie. My parents, my own mother and father, they weren't just complicit bystanders, they were the architects, the masterminds. Mallory, the sister I'd sacrificed everything for, was their willing, gleeful accomplice. The full, horrifying truth of their deception didn't just hit me. It detonated, shattering my world into a million razor-sharp pieces. The air rushed from my lungs. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the sink, the cold porcelain biting into my palms, the only solid thing in a universe that had just imploded. I locked the bathroom door, my movements stiff, robotic. My reflection showed wide, unseeing eyes. The sounds of the party downstairs, the music, the laughter, Aunt Penny's booming laugh, seemed to mock me from another planet. I sank to the cool tile floor. The burner phone clutched in my hand like a venomous snake. My breath came in shallow, ragged bursts. I scrolled again, forcing myself to absorb every venomous word, every damning photograph. There were messages detailing how Mum coached Mallory on faking symptoms, how Dad diverted funds from my medical emergency transfers into offshore accounts they joked about as their retirement villa fund. There were selfies of Mallory and Caesar on shopping sprees in cities I could only dream of visiting, all while I was measuring out her medication and changing her bed linens. They'd even mocked my cheap clothes, my perpetually tired expression. "Our little martyr," one message from Mallory read, punctuated with a string of laughing emojis. "She actually believes this saintly act will get her into heaven." The initial shock, the tidal wave of grief that threatened to drown me, began to recede, replaced by something else. Something cold. Something hard. A fury so profound it burned away the tears before they could even form. It wasn't the wild, screaming rage I might have expected. It was a chillingly clear, precise anger that settled deep in my bones. My mind, usually fogged with exhaustion and worry, sharpened to a razor's edge. I picked up the phone. My fingers, surprisingly steady, began to move. Forward, forward, forward. Every incriminating message, every revealing photo, every attached file. The faked medical reports showing astronomical costs, the doctored invoices from phantom clinics, the spreadsheets where they tracked Violet's contributions. I forwarded them all to my own email address. Then, with a few quick taps, I created a new, anonymous cloud storage account and began uploading everything. A digital fortress of their betrayal. The designer, bag receipt. Dad's angel investor comment. Mallory's sudden good days coinciding with my paychecks. The constant stream of new expensive items. It all clicked into place, forming a sickeningly clear mosaic of their calculated emotional and financial vampirism. They hadn't just lied, they had systematically dismantled my life piece by piece for their own selfish gain. The grief was still there, a hollow ache in my chest, but it was overshadowed by this new, electrifying rage. The Violet who had patiently fluffed pillows and administered medication, the Violet who had wept over dwindling bank balances and begged for extensions on bills, was gone. She had died in this bathroom, staring at the casual cruelty of her own family. In her place, someone else was emerging. Someone I didn't recognize? Someone who was terrifyingly calm. A plan began to form, not in sorrow but with a cold, methodical clarity. They had played me for a fool for 5 years. They had laughed at my sacrifice. They had stolen my future. Now they would pay, every last one of them. A knock on the door. "Violet? Darling, are you all right in there? You've been ages." Mum's voice syrupy sweet. "Mallory's about to make her speech. You wouldn't want to miss her joyous moment, would you?" Her words, meant to coax, instead acted as fuel. Joyous moment. The audacity. I stood up, my legs surprisingly steady. I smoothed down my dress, the cheap polyester one I'd bought on sale 2 years ago. I looked at my reflection again. The hollow-eyed stranger was still there, but now there was a glint in her eyes. A dangerous spark. "Coming, Mum," I called back, my voice even, almost serene. I tucked Mallory's burner phone into my pocket. Evidence. Downstairs, the party was indeed in full swing. Faces beamed. Champagne flowed. My family, my abusers, were the stars of the show, soaking in the undeserved adoration. They had no idea the storm that was about to break. They had no idea that their little ATM, their gullible martyr, was about to make a withdrawal of her own. And this time, the currency would be their ruin. I descended the stairs, a polite, almost vacant smile plastered on my face. Mum rushed over, fussing with my hair. "There you are. We were getting worried. Feeling better?" "Much better, Mum," I said, my voice smooth as glass. "Just needed a moment." She beamed, relieved. "Good, good. Mallory's just about to start. Find a good spot." For the next hour, I moved through the party like a ghost with a purpose. While pretending to refill chip bowls or direct guests to the restroom, my eyes scanned, my mind catalogued. I, accidentally, wandered into Mom and Dad's master bedroom, ostensibly looking for a spare tablecloth. On Mom's vanity, nestled amongst her expensive perfumes, sat a brand new diamond tennis bracelet I'd never seen before. Click. My phone camera was discreet. In Dad's open briefcase, peeking out from under a stack of golf magazines, was a glossy brochure for luxury condos in Boca Raton. Click. Then, the jackpot. Tucked away on the bottom shelf of Dad's mahogany desk in his study, behind a row of leather-bound classics he never read, I found a thick manila folder simply labelled M. Medical. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened it. Not fakes this time, or at least, not just fakes. Interspersed with the forged lab reports and inflated hospital bills were actual travel itineraries. First-class flights to the Caribbean, bookings for 5-star resorts in Mexico, spa receipts that cost more than my monthly rent would have, all dated within the last 5 years, all coinciding with periods Mallory was supposedly too fragile to even be moved to a different hospital. Click, click, click. Each photo was another nail in their coffins, my heart hammered, not with fear, but with a grim satisfaction. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and made my way to a quiet corner of the patio. I scrolled through my contacts, my finger hovering over a name I hadn't dialed in years. Tatum, my best friend from college, a sharp, no-nonsense paralegal. We'd drifted apart, mostly because my situation with Mallory had consumed every waking moment, leaving no room for friendships, for life. Violet, is that really you? Tatum's voice was surprised, but warm. Tatum, hi, listen, I'm in a really complicated situation, I began, keeping my voice low. I need some urgent advice about documenting fraud, serious fraud. There was a pause. Fraud? Violet, what's going on? Are you okay? I will be, I said, a new steel in my voice. Just tell me, hypothetically, what's the best way to secure digital evidence? Messages, photos, financial records? Tatum, ever the professional, quickly shifted into gear. She gave me concise, invaluable tips, screenshots with timestamps, secure cloud backups, avoiding altering original files, the importance of a clear chain of custody if it ever went to court. And, Violet, she added, her voice softening, whatever this is, if you need help, real help, I'm here. Okay? Thank you, Tatum. That means more than you know, I said, a flicker of genuine warmth touching the ice in my veins. I have to go. I'll explain later. Next, a quick, anonymous online search. Report tax fraud. State. The official government website loaded. I carefully typed out a hypothetical scenario in their online inquiry form, detailing a family consistently underreporting income derived from fraudulent means, living lavishly while claiming poverty. I hit send. Another seed planted. Meanwhile, the architects of my misery were basking in the glow of their deception. Mom was regaling a group of sympathetic friends with tales of Mallory's bravery. Dad was holding court by the bar, accepting condolences for their ordeal. Mallory, looking radiant and remarkably healthy in her sequin top, was surrounded by a gaggle of admirers, occasionally dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. As I passed by a secluded alcove near the kitchen, I overheard their voices, Mom, Dad, and Mallory huddled together, their tones conspiratorial. After tonight, the recovery fund should give us a nice little boost, Dad was saying. And then, Mallory asked, a hint of petulance in her voice, do I have to go back to being sick all the time? It's so boring. Don't worry, darling, Mom soothed. We'll invent something new, a chronic but manageable condition, something that still requires support, just for maintenance, you know? Keep a little something flowing from our devoted Violet. She won't even question it. A cold smile touched my lips. Oh, They had no idea. They thought this party was the culmination of their scam. They didn't realize it was just the beginning of their end. And the maintenance they were planning? It was going to cost them far more than they could ever imagine. The string quartet transitioned from a lively Vivaldi piece to something softer, more poignant. A hush fell over the crowd. Dad stepped onto the small, makeshift stage on the patio, beaming. "Friends, family," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate this incredible day. A day we honestly thought we might never see." He paused, dabbing at his eyes. "Our brave Mallory. Well, she has something she'd like to say." He gestured dramatically towards Mallory, who glided towards the microphone, looking ethereal in her shimmering top. She clutched a small, lace-edged card, the picture of fragile, triumphant recovery. My stomach twisted. Earlier, under the guise of helping with the AV setup, I had ensured my phone was seamlessly connected to the powerful Bluetooth speaker system Dad had rented for the occasion. "Just want to make sure Mallory's playlist sounds perfect," I told the slightly bewildered technician, who was happy to let me tinker. Now, a meticulously curated selection of audio clips, snippets from their damning group chat, recorded with a screen recording app I'd hastily downloaded in the bathroom, was queued up. On the large flat-screen TV nearby, meant for a sentimental photo slideshow, a different kind of presentation was ready. A grim gallery of their deceit, the incriminating messages, the faked reports, the vacation photos. My heart wasn't pounding with fear anymore. It was a steady, rhythmic drumbeat of anticipation. A cold, exhilarating calm had settled over me. This was it. The culmination of 5 years of their lies and a few short hours of my furious, focused preparation. Aunt Penny, Mum's older sister, a woman with eyes that missed nothing, caught my gaze from across the patio. She gave me a long, searching look, a slight frown creasing her brow. She'd always been sharper than the rest of them, less easily swayed by Mum's dramatics. I offered her a small, almost imperceptible smile. She didn't smile back, but her frown deepened, as if she sensed the shift in the atmosphere, the crackle of impending doom. Uncle Sullivan, Dad's affable, easily impressed brother, was already dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief, completely sold on the performance. He beamed at Mallory, then at me, giving me a thumbs up. "You're a good girl, Violet. A real saint," he mouthed. I wondered what he'd think in about 5 minutes. Mallory reached the microphone. She took a shaky breath, her eyes glistening with perfectly timed tears. The crowd murmured, sympathetically. "Oh, wow," she began, her voice trembling prettily. I hardly know what to say. Looking out at all your faces, it's just overwhelming." She pressed a hand to her chest. "This journey, it's been so hard. There were times I didn't think I'd make it." Mum sniffled loudly from the front row. Dad put a comforting arm around her. "But through it all," Mallory continued, her voice gaining strength, "I had my amazing family, my incredible parents who never gave up hope." She smiled tearfully at them. "And my sister?" Her gaze found mine. It was filled with a condescending pity that made my blood boil. "My angel sister, Violet." The crowd awed. Several people turned to look at me, their faces soft with admiration. "Violet," Mallory said, her voice ringing with false sincerity, "I wouldn't be here without you. You sacrificed everything for me. Your time, your energy, well, everything. You're the reason I'm standing here today, healthy and whole." She paused for effect, waiting for the applause that was sure to come. I stood near the rented DJ table where the speaker controls were located. My finger hovered over the play button on my phone. The small, almost imperceptible smile was still on my face. Let her have her moment, I thought. Let them all soak it in. The higher they climbed, the harder they would fall. The silence stretched, pregnant with anticipation. Mallory beamed, ready to launch into the next phase of her Oscar-worthy performance. This was it. Showtime. Just as the first smattering of applause began, I moved. I stepped forward, calm and deliberate, and picked up the spare microphone from the DJ table. "Actually, Mallory," I said, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the expectant hush, "there's a little more to your miracle than anyone here knows, and I have the real story." A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. Mallory's smile froze. Mom and Dad exchanged uneasy glances. Before anyone could react, I pressed play. Mallory's voice, tinny and distorted, but unmistakably hers, filled the sudden silence. "OMG, this party is going to be epic. Can't wait to see everyone's faces. You think they'll buy my miracle speech?" A collective gasp went through the crowd. Heads swiveled from Mallory, whose face was rapidly draining of colour, to me. Then, Caesar's voice smug and confident. "Babe, you're a natural. They'll be eating out of your hand. Just remember to look suitably frail when you thank our little ATM." Simultaneously, the large TV screen flickered to life. Not with sentimental family photos, but with a screenshot of that very message. Mallory's laughing emoji stark against the white background. Mom's voice next, dripping with disdain. "Violet really outdid herself as our little ATM. Good thing she's too gullible to question anything. She even used her last credit card for the caterer. Bless her devoted little heart." The screen changed again. A photo of Mallory and Caesar, tanned and grinning, arms around each other on a sun-drenched beach. The date stamp clearly visible. A week she was supposedly in critical condition. "What is the meaning of this, Violet?" Dad thundered, his face purpling. He started to rise to move towards me. "Stay right where you are, Dad," I said, my voice like ice. "There's more." Another audio clip. Dad's own voice, jovial and conspiratorial. "Atta girl, Simone. Knew we raised a smart one in Mal. This illness has been the gift that keeps on giving." The screen flashed again. A scanned copy of a forged hospital bill, the astronomical sum circled in red, followed by a bank statement showing a large transfer from my account, and then another statement showing a similar amount deposited into an offshore account under a generic company name. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder, morphing from disbelief to horror, then to outrage. People were on their feet, pointing, shouting. "This is slander! Lies!" Simone shrieked, lunging towards the AV equipment. But several guests, their faces grim, moved to block her. "For 5 years," I said, my voice ringing out over the rising chaos, "my family has perpetrated a monstrous fraud. They faked Mallory's terminal illness. They drained my life savings, destroyed my career, and emotionally blackmailed me into becoming their full-time caregiver and personal bank." I clicked through the slideshow on my phone, which controlled the TV. More photos, the luxury purchases, the vacation itineraries, screenshots of their cruel jokes about my sacrifices. "They lived a life of luxury on my dime," I continued, my voice unwavering, while I struggled to pay for the medications and treatments that were nothing but a sham. "They vacationed in paradise while telling me Mallory was too sick to leave her bed." Mallory had crumpled onto a chair, no longer feigning frailty, but genuinely sobbing, not with remorse, but with sheer, unadulterated panic. Her carefully constructed world was imploding around her. Dad stood frozen, his face a mask of apoplectic rage and dawning terror. Simone was screaming incoherently, clawing at the air. "I knew it!" Aunt Penny's voice cut through the din. "I always said something wasn't right about how quickly you went through money, Simone, and how well you always seemed to be doing, despite it all." Uncle Sullivan just stared, his mouth agape, his earlier admiration replaced with stunned revulsion. Other relatives were shouting accusations, demanding answers. Friends of my parents looked horrified, disgusted. The party had devolved into utter chaos. Amidst the pandemonium, I raised my voice one last time, clear and cutting. And just so you know, the police are already on their way. I called them an hour ago. Detective Derek McCormick should be here any minute. The effect was instantaneous. Simone's shrieks died in her throat. Dad's face, already flushed, went a ghastly shade of white. Mallory looked up, her tear-streaked face a mask of pure terror. The fight drained out of them, replaced by a primal fear. They knew. They knew it was over. The miracle they'd manufactured had just spectacularly backfired. The flashing blue and red lights cut through the festive patio decorations just as I finished speaking. 2 uniformed officers, followed by a plainclothes detective who introduced himself as Derek McCormick, stepped into the stunned silence. The chaos momentarily subsided, replaced by a tense, expectant hush. "Violet?" Detective McCormick asked, his gaze sharp but not unkind. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "That's me. And this." I gestured towards the still active TV screen displaying their damning messages, then held up Mallory's burner phone and the manila folder I'd retrieved from Dad's study. "Is the evidence." I spent the next hour with Detective McCormick in the quiet of Dad's study. The irony wasn't lost on me, calmly laying out the entire sordid affair. I handed over the burner phone, the folder of documents, and a USB drive containing every photo, every screenshot, every forwarded message, all meticulously organized into folders. He listened intently, occasionally asking a clarifying question, his expression growing grimmer with each revelation. Through the partially closed door, I could hear the muffled sounds of my family being questioned. Mallory's hysterical sobs, Mum's indignant denials quickly turning to panicked pleading, Dad's blustering attempts at authority crumbling into stammered excuses. Caesar, who had tried to melt into the background when the first audio clip played, was also being spoken to, his earlier swagger completely gone. By the time the sun began to set, casting long, mournful shadows across the ruined party, Mallory, Mom, and Dad were being escorted out in handcuffs. The sight of their stunned, defeated faces, stripped of all their arrogance, brought a strange, hollow ache to my chest, but no regret. Caesar followed soon after, looking utterly bewildered. The following weeks were a maelstrom. News of the miracle recovery party bust spread like wildfire through our community and beyond. The charges were extensive. Multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, even forgery for the faked medical documents. Leighton Elliott, an investigator from the state tax agency, contacted me after my anonymous tip. His interest piqued. I met with him and provided another, even more detailed set of documents focusing on their undeclared income and lavish spending. He assured me they would be pursuing the case vigorously. The calls started almost immediately. Distant relatives I barely knew, former friends of my parents, even their lawyer, all with the same message. Think about what you're doing, Violet. They're still your family. Can't you find it in your heart to be merciful? Surely it was all a misunderstanding. Mum, Dad, and Mallory, through their increasingly desperate lawyers, sent messages filled with a nauseating blend of feigned remorse, accusations, and pathetic appeals to family bonds. They begged me to recant, to say I'd been overwrought, that I'd misinterpreted things. They promised to make it up to me, to get help. I ignored them all. I changed my number. I cooperated fully with Detective McCormick and Investigator Elliott, providing supplementary statements, clarifying details. Tatum became my rock, offering not just legal insight but unwavering moral support. She helped me find a small, temporary apartment, far away from the house that held so many years of bitter memories. "Are you sure about this, Vi?" Tatum asked one evening as we were packing the few belongings I actually owned. No second thoughts? No desire to just let it go? I looked at her, a box of my old paralegal textbooks in my hands. "Let it go, Tatum? They stole 5 years of my life. They gaslighted me, manipulated me, and laughed about it while they spent my money. They were planning to keep doing it, indefinitely. If I let it go, what message does that send? That it's okay? That there are no consequences? I shook my head. No. The bill always comes due. The legal process was slow, but inexorable. The evidence was overwhelming. Their attempts to paint me as unstable or vindictive fell flat against the mountain of their own words and actions. They begged me to save them from the consequences of their own actions, the very actions that nearly destroyed me. They still don't understand that the Violet they knew, their silent victim, their angel investor, died the day I read those messages in that upstairs bathroom. This new Violet? She doesn't do bailouts. She ensures the bill always comes due. And I made sure the authorities had everything. Far more than they ever bargained for. They wanted a miracle. They got one. They miraculously found out what happens when you push someone too far. My first act of true independence was applying for a job at a downtown law firm, the one I'd dreamed about before Mallory's illness began. The liberation was profound, if somber. The void they left was real, but so was the clean, sharp air of freedom.